Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Niels Malotaux.
My name is Niels Malotaux. I'm an electronic engineer and a quality on time coach. Today I will talk about the case where there was a huge backlog of testing work causing long delivery delays and angry customers moving to the competition. I helped the testers to restructure their delivery thinking, resulting in happy customers being amazed about the culture change. Sales increased hugely. Let's start.
That's difficult. Some people ask, can you do a webinar? I said, I can't. Maybe I'm getting old, but I need the audience, so thank you for being here. So, yeah, I had been, well, let's first see, who am I? Well, I already said something. I help teams to do better results in less time. After 3 weeks, people spend 30% less for better results. It's not after a year or so, no transformations, no. We start the first week and 3 weeks people learn to do that. The problem is, many people or management ask me usually when things go wrong. So we call that project rescue, but that's easy. And sometimes I actually develop a product to eat my own dog food. So I had been going to some company in some country where the guy, the R&D director, asked me, can you help us to do things faster and better? So I went there a few days a year and he could then continue the work. But one February he called me, he said, Niels, we have a QA problem. I said, do you mean a testing problem? Yes, we have a testing problem. Because some people think QA and testing is the same. Well, this conference is testing plus QA, so you know it's not the same. If you want to discuss that, we can do that later. So what's the problem, I ask? Well, we have this large pile of stuff to be tested, 16 developers feeding this, putting stuff on this pile. And we had 2 testers, but one of the testers went to the boss. He said, next door I can get more salary. End of it. He left. So there's only one tester left, plus a junior tester. So when I got there, actually, this was the picture I saw. He was just sitting there. And these developers putting things on the pile. And the boss says, you shall do full regression test before delivering anything to a customer. I said, what's regression test? Well, it means that we have to do all the tests we ever made for this product, and usually that takes about 15 days. Okay, probably not much automation. So, too few testers. He said, should we hire a few more testers? I said, no. First, let's see what the problem is before solving the wrong problem. So, can you help? He asked, can you help? I said, yes, of course I can. He didn't see my face through the phone. So, he said, how do you know? Good question. I said, I have a secret weapon. I've done this so many times, and usually within a day, we know what to do. So, you want to know what my secret weapon is? You recognize this? The good old plan, do, check, act, the Deming cycle. In 19, what is it? So much he told the Japanese, and they understood, and we know what happened then. So, the problem is, usually we don't do plan, do, check, act, do we? We do do. I can't call it plan, it's pl. What's the next thing we have to do? We do it. Next thing we have to do, we do it. Intuitive cycle. Yeah, how we did things all the time. So I can't call it plan, I call it do. That's how we work, don't we? Now, if intuition, how we automatically react on a situation, if intuition would be perfect, everything we do would be perfect. Not everything we do is perfect, right? So apparently intuition sometimes points us in the wrong direction. So once we recognize that, we can think, can we do something about it? Now intuition in us is very strong. Survival strategy, probably. But once we recognize it, we can say, can we actively do something about it? Okay, let's plan what we want to do and how we are going to do it. And then we do it according to the plan, which is the first pitfall, because the plan must be doable and we must follow the plan. But let's assume we did that. Then in the check phase we can say, okay, was the result according to plan? And was the way we achieved it according to plan and efficient, the right way? Yeah, Deming also called it study. To study what happened, to learn. And then in the act phase, we decide what to do differently the next time. Because if you don't do anything differently, the result will be the same, right? Otherwise statistics wouldn't exist. So, plan, do, check, act, and actually, do we always check? In the back of our mind, we do some, yeah, we didn't do it right and we could have done it better, but we're so busy, so we go to the next stage, do. How about actively going to the act phase? What are we going to do differently the next cycle? The next week, the next day, the next task? So instead of complaining about the problem, which means we are stuck in the check phase, you can ask your colleague, what are we going to do about it? That way we move each other to the act phase. What are we going to do about it? So, that's my secret weapon. Instead of complaining about it, what are we going to do about it? But in order to do that, first we have to see what the problem is. Because often, intuitively, we may start solving a problem that's not the right problem. Yeah? So first develop the problem before you develop the solution. I said, where's the projector? That's several years ago. The projector was hanging there but didn't work. I don't know why, but so after a few minutes they had a projector. Said start up Excel, and the tester sitting there. Yeah. Said put Excel there and put the things, the chunks of work that's on your pile. I had to change it into package because of course there was the actual text he typed in. This is actually the data he did, only a little bit anonymized. Yeah? The guy knew exactly what he was working on. He knew his customers, he knew the things that were going there, but it was just too much work. So I said, what's the estimate? How many days do you need to do all these things? And in the past I already trained people in quick estimation, so he came up, he prepared, and these were his numbers. We added them up, 106 days. That's about half a year. So some customers had to wait half a year. Can you imagine they were going to the competition? So I said, okay, if a package is too big, it's difficult to say something about it. So let's cut one of the packages in pieces, just as an exercise. So he did that. And at a certain moment, at 8.8, he said, okay, yeah, or together we said, okay, we can go on, but this is an exercise. You know the drill. So the next question is, okay, yeah, well, the next question is not the question. It's the fact we can't wait half a year for this to happen because all those developers keep putting things so the pile wouldn't disappear. So I said, okay, developers are going to stop development. Tester, you get the whole company at your disposal. Because we have to get rid of this. Remember what you just saw, this graph yeah, in the previous presentation. So you get the whole company at your disposal. If you need the boss to do anything for you, I'll make him do it. Can you imagine his smile already was moving a little bit up? Yeah. Now, if you have the whole company at your disposal, you still have a responsible task that anything that goes on to customers simply works. Simple requirement I always use. What we deliver simply works. If it doesn't work, we don't deliver. So you still need work to let the other people work as much as possible for you and make sure that what we deliver works. How much time do you as the bottleneck still need? He looked at it and these were the numbers he just typed in. 47. 47 days, that's about 9 weeks. Okay, and junior tester, what can she do and will she take more time or less time? Well, sanity check. Developers, well, maybe only one developer, the rest can go on holiday or so. Or they can think how never to produce bugs anymore, which is even better. So then the question is, who's waiting for this? Because some customers may have been waiting already for weeks or months. They were in projects using our products, and they were waiting for a solution that they were stuck. And either they went to the competition or finished their project with a workaround. So maybe some of them aren't waiting for these issues anymore. So if we deliver something to a customer not waiting, that's not much value because the others may still be waiting. So who is the most eagerly waiting customer, which is also the most important customer? So I have a technique I teach. I call it timeline. In timeline, we don't look at 1 or 2 weeks, we look at several weeks. Because I found if a team has to look only at one sprint, as Scrum calls it, I call it the delivery cycle, then they don't feel easy. Is this the right thing to do now? If you have a few of those sprints, you can optimize the order of doing things. So I use a horizon of 8 or 10 weeks. 4 or 5 cycles of delivery. So how about, I just showed him this picture. Yeah, and you don't have to deliver to customer A everything. Does this work? No. Customer A, well, because you said something that they need now, and then they're busy with that to implement it in their system. And then you can help others and then decide to help customer A with the next thing he needs. Optimizing the order of things. Some customers are just screaming, but they never buy anything. So forget them for the moment. Yeah. So who is the most important customer, most eagerly waiting? So he filled in the names of the customers. And then we said, okay, what's the next step? Question mark. We don't know who's waiting for this. Should we work on this? Or better find out who's waiting for this? So I asked, it's 22nd of February. Can we make a customer happy tomorrow? Now, on this day I was wasting his time with this exercise. So tomorrow means day after tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow he can do. And they said, yeah, I can do that. And the 24th, I can deliver, make that customer happy. Yeah, but the full regression test. Yeah, there was a developer, he said, well, full regression test means we have to test everything on this product we ever did. And the developer said, well, you know, this test covers about 30% of the whole product. So what's the point of full regression test? So I said to this senior tester, anyway, so this way he looked at the things and added a few dates. And then I said, okay, for the moment this is enough exercise, you're busy for the coming days. And you know the drill. You can work out this for yourself. Anyway, what was the result of this exercise? He did this. You know the guy, he found a very small whiteboard. Later I saw that. He had this little whiteboard. He put the timeline on there of a few weeks, 4 weeks I think he did. And he had it on his desk, took it to his meetings. Yeah, it was, I mean, a whiteboard is so much more powerful than a computer. Computer you have to switch on. Sometimes there is nothing. Yeah, and the whiteboard is always there, and you can easily do something faster than even than in the computer. So every week he updated his 4 week and thinking, what am I going to do this week? Yeah, which customer am I going to make happy? And what happened? Tester empowered. You've heard about empowering teams? Who is empowered in his work? Who's not empowered in his work? You're fooling me. I mean either or. Who's empowered in his work? Who's not empowered in his work? You're still fooling me, but let's not waste more time. Always check the statistics. Yeah, don't believe anything. He was empowered because we said, you decide what we have to do to get out of this mess. So his smile went up even more. It was done in 9 weeks. The whole pile was gone, and since then the pile never actually grew too much. Yeah. Full regression testing was reorganized and rethought about. Customers systematically getting happy and being amazed. What's happening here? This company sucked. We didn't like them anymore, and suddenly they start delivering good stuff. I think that should be normal, but well, sometimes you get stuck and you need an outsider to kick your butt. Yeah. So revenue, 1 year later I was again at that company, and they said, Niels, you know what happened after that? Revenue increased 70% in the past year. And that is because what you did. I said, I didn't do anything. I was there only 1 day. You did it. I only gave you a hint. So later, tester promoted to product manager and coaching his successors in this technique. So the principle of this timeline is cutting the work in chunks, estimating, and who doesn't like estimating? Who likes estimating? Still fooling me, but estimation is not for anybody else than for yourself. Yeah? And estimating is not what will we have done after a year. That's useless. Yeah? Estimation has many good reasons, but not the reasons you think. That's why most of you don't like it. If you want to know more, we can discuss afterwards. So it usually takes little time. Usually if I ask how much time does it take, you say, ooh, so much. Last week I was at the conference and somebody said, when the question was, how do you estimate these things you don't know? He said, and if you needed to know it better. I like that one. The interesting thing is, estimates are not accurate. Otherwise it would be a prediction. Yeah? But the nice thing is, if on average all your estimates are right, less and more and less and more, the sum is very precise. Simple mathematics. Very useful. And for many other reasons very useful. But nobody taught you, so if nobody taught you, you don't know the usefulness and you don't use that. Anyway, so estimating, in this case, course in days. What's the point in doing it more exact? Adding up, as I said, averages add up very nicely and you have a good prediction. And usually, if you add it up, just like here, you recognize that? It doesn't fit the available time, right? So what do you do if it doesn't fit the available time? You have to. Failure is not an option, so that's not a problem. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do less? What are we going to do differently? Half of what people do in a project or in their work later proves not to have been necessary, like producing bugs. But that's another story. So if you can foresee that half, I mean, in a retrospective, you can say we shouldn't have done it, but the time is already gone. If in a perspective you see I'm going to do it and it won't be necessary, you can still decide not to do it. So if half of that half you can predict, I won't do it, you already save 20%, 25% of your time. It's that easy. So find strategies to solve the dilemma, as we did. Select the best strategy to whatever you know. Every week you can change that. Predict what will happen when. Learn and repeat every week. That's simple technique. So another example. One guy working on something, and I call it in this case activities. I don't remember what he wrote, but I can't even tell you. He added days. He already spent some days when I did the exercise with him. Yeah. So the first thing that's interesting is what's the ratio of actual time and estimate. That's where we learn to feed our intuition to come up with quick estimates. Usually after a few weeks people estimate in a few seconds. Then the investment is very worth. So interesting to see. Sometimes you see the estimate was quite okay. We don't talk about it. But if the estimate and the real is significantly different, not for me to judge, but for the person itself, because it's his learning. So then we can say, okay, what kind of activity was that? And then we can think, does he need education? Did he forget something in the estimation? And the next time he shouldn't forget. Like a lot of developers think, what's the time to develop something? And they forget the testing time, which often is about the same time as the development, isn't it? So you already can learn from this. But then you can have a calibration factor. Don't run away. I mean, don't even do this. But I just want to tell you the possible ways of using this. So what's the calibration factor? We take the time already spent divided by the estimates. So usually we take need 30% more than we thought. Yeah. So then we multiply what we haven't done yet with 1.4 and we come up with this. Why don't I multiply the rest activities that he already started? Because when you have worked on it already, I assume that the tail doesn't have to be multiplied. And now this is the only column that management is interested in. Don't waste their time with velocity, with story points, which is crap anyway, but that's another story. So don't waste their time with that. They're not interested. They only want to know, when is it done, right? If they ask, when is it done, do you have an answer? I know the answer usually. I used that a long time ago. Yeah, it's done when it is done. Yeah. Well, they don't accept that. So with this technique, you can say, okay, based on this, if the 5th of June you need for maybe some presentation or so, you need some release, then we can say, okay, these activities will be done, those probably won't be done. And if that's not what you like or what you need, then we can talk about it. Don't talk about the problem. What are we going to do about it? And the fact that you have this, you can talk about it. If you tell your boss, that's impossible, looking in the eyes, you get emotions and guess who's the boss. If you have facts, and together you look at facts, managers seem to be not as stupid as you thought they were. They can talk business if you have the right thing. So that column is interesting for them. So, am I right that usually we are late? Who is always on time? Who's usually late? A few people are actually honest. Okay, now, thank you. What are the options we have if we see that we're... And the problem is, most teams see that they can't meet the deadline the last week before the deadline, right? But you knew already weeks before. Yeah, and you only hope, remember that's ostrich, take it out of the sand. Yeah, don't hope, that doesn't work. So, timeline is, we have now. I mean, we can't change history. Whatever happened, good or bad, we can't change it. We can learn from it, but we always work from now to the fatal date, which is another word for deadline. Yeah? What's the value still to earn with the time still available? And can we optimize that, as we did with the tester? And the first time I made this picture, ages ago, that last line, that bottom line, was going over the fatal date. And then I realized, well, when the match is over, you can't score a goal. So it means we started too late. What are we going to do about it? So, I found several options we have. And the first 4 options are the options we often see people do because intuitively they are so strong, they don't work. It makes things even worse. That's why I call them the deceptive options. Yeah? Hoping for the best. You see that you're not going to make it, but we hope we still can make it. Well, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. Or the macho. Yeah, we have to do it. Let's go for it. Well, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. Who's working overtime? Be honest, 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 more honest. Okay. Never, ever work overtime. Because you're fooling yourself and your boss. 40 hours of work is already heavy. And you make a certain number of errors, right? We are people. People make mistakes. We are people, so we make mistakes. If you work more than 40 hours a week, you get more tired. What happens if you get more tired? You make even more errors. So in the end, you only work overtime to repair the errors you made because you worked overtime. You see the logic? Never, ever do it. So that once or twice a year, you have the energy to do it when it's really necessary and useful. Projects are full of paradoxes. Never ever do it, but sometimes. That's what the rules are for. That's what agility means. Moving the deadline. Sometimes moving deadlines. Or are deadlines fake? Who knows fake deadlines? Yeah. Well, many deadlines are real. If it isn't in the shop for Christmas, we don't need it anymore. Or I was working on a chip for mobile phones. If it's not at the GSM fair so that the Samsungs and Nokia see it, if it's there next year, it's already obsolete. No point. Yeah? Deadlines are serious. Serious deadlines are serious. Okay. Yeah. Now, if you move the deadline, Parkinson's law says people fill the time available. Yeah. So if you move the deadline, you have more time available. You will fill it. You're done, but you can do a little bit more and a little bit nicer, etc. I mean, we're human. I'm human. I know it. All these things I first saw in myself, and then I look around. I'm not that special. So student syndrome is the other side of the same medal. Yeah. You remember you had to work for an exam? When did you start really working on it? 3 weeks before, which most of the ladies did, or the last night before? Okay. Yeah. So we know that. Human behavior. And the interesting thing with human behavior is first we start recognizing it, then accepting it, and then see what can we do with it. You can't do something about it. We can't change our genes. But what can we do with it? Well, that's my talk next month in Minsk. You can go there. Human behavior in QA. Okay. So the only way you may move the deadline is towards you. Because then these effects work the positive way for us. I love deadlines. They make us so much more efficient. Yeah, so we have weekly deadlines for the work we do, bi-weekly deadlines for the deliveries we do, etc. Now, the option number 5 is adding people. Does that sometimes happen? They say, can you open another can of developers? Can you open another can of testers? Because then we can do more? Well, it also doesn't work, usually. So, assume there's a 12-person month project. Yeah, of course you don't know what you do in the months after the first month, but roughly 12 months. Okay, you can do this with 6 people in 2 months, with 4 people in 3 months, and with 2 people in 6 months. That's how project managers do mathematics, right? Now, Brooks' Law, 1975, yeah, he said, adding people to a late project makes it later. Well, actually, adding people to a project makes it later. Well, let's see. Putnam measured it. He took 500 projects that were already done, so they couldn't tamper with the numbers. 500 projects of similar size and different team size. And he found the cheapest project is 2 people. The fastest project is 3 to 5 people, but only 20% faster. So you pay a premium for time to market, which usually is very useful. Yeah, and some managers say you still must go faster. Well, we have heard it already at this conference. Then you come in the 9 mothers area, where they think you take 9 mothers and make a baby in 1 month. Some clever managers say, I'm going to make 9 babies, but that's another story. So then people said, well, Mr. Putnam, now we have better tools, better techniques, we went to a course and things like that. So that's not true. So 15 years later, he did the same. 500 projects, similar size, different team size. Same. Has nothing to do with tools. It's human behavior. Yeah. Like Brooks already said, if we have 1 person, we have no communication lines. If we have 2 people, 1 communication line. 3 people, 3 lines. 4, it goes almost exponential. So if you have more and more people, in the end, you only are communicating without doing any work. So it's all logic, and psychologists know this. So what is the low-hanging fruit? Option 6. Option 7 is not on my list. That's killing the project now, instead of after 3 times the budget. But that's a simple one. Saving time. As I said, half of what we do in projects later proved not to have been necessary. If you see it in a perspective, you can still decide not to do it or do it differently. If you see it in a retrospective, you already wasted the time. What's the option? Don't use retrospective, use perspectives. And there are many elements we can do. Efficiency in what, why, for who we do. When we are done. Efficiency in how we do it, the product, the project, continuously optimizing, plan to check act, plan to check act, plan to check act. Right order, and time boxing, moving the deadline towards you. Yeah, time boxing is the opposite of feature boxing. Feature boxing is waiting until it's ready, and then if there is no deadline, you know what Parkinson's law does. We have all the time. Yeah. So that's low-hanging fruit. Continuous elimination of waste. Have you heard that? Nothing new. Now, even more important than deadlines are starting deadlines, because if you focus on the deadline, yeah, you will go over it. At the last week you say, that's the deadline, too late. In 1 week you can't optimize your performance anymore. So the quicker you know, the more time you have to do things better and save time. So starting deadlines are much more important. The starting deadline means what is the minimum duration. Yeah, I make something and I have to check with stakeholders and I redo something and it has to be tested and this and that and that and that. What's the time from the deadline counting back? And if you do that for several elements of your work, hopefully everything, all of those starting deadlines, they start after now. Because if they start before now, you already have a bigger problem. And hopefully you have time between now and the first starting deadline so that you can move them, because you can't do everything at the same time. Yeah. Focus on the deadline, count back when you should have started, because every day you start later, you already can tell your customer, forget it, you get it a day later. Simple. So, this is one element of what we call evolutionary project management. The word is from Tom Gilp. Some people may have heard about him. Evolutionary delivery, which is, we call him the grandfather of Agile. And it's the oldest Agile method. And I just listed a lot of things in my toolbox, of which this timeline is just one. First, plan, do, check, act, the secret ingredient. Business case, why are we doing it? Do you, as tester, know why we are doing this? If you know why we are doing it, you can do a better job. Requirements. And the requirements is not the functional requirements, they are not interesting. Well, they're interesting because we're focused on those. But the essence of what we do is improving what people already do. Banks for thousands of years, first with clay tablets, then with cardboard cards, and now with computers. They still do the same. They love our money. Yeah. So the essence of the project is to let them do it faster, better, nicer, happier. So those are the important ones. And we have to quantify them so that we can measure, are we already there? Architecture and design, we heard that in the previous talk. Architecture and design, to me, is to find the optimum compromise between the conflicting requirements, because requirements are always in conflict. Yeah, budget, performance. Early review and inspections, we can talk about that later. And then what I added to that was quantifying the way we do it. A weekly task cycle, bi-weekly delivery cycle, bi-weekly or less, not a fixed length, and timeline. So the business case is, why do we do it? Yep, 2 minutes, I hear. Why do we do it? Requirements is what, how much, and are we done? Architecture and design, how are we going to do it? Review is check as early as possible. Task cycle, to have efficiency of what we do. Efficiency to me is effectiveness plus time. Delivery cycle, to find out which assumptions are wrong. Yeah, to give it to stakeholders and see what they do with it. Timeline, to see what will happen and what to do about it. Because usually if we look what will happen, it will take longer than we have. What are we going to do about it? And that's the one I explained today. So, right result, right time, I call that quality on time. That's why I call myself a quality on time coach. Help, we have a QA problem, we solve the problem. Thank you.